Know what I see? A clean slate.
And let's keep it that way, Daryl. No more disasters, flammable or otherwise.
I make no promises.
This is actually going to be my first review of a Disney show on this channel. Only took me about a year and a half, what can I say? But it had to happen at some point, and I feel that this is probably the one that I'm most comfortable talking about, considering what I would have to say about every other Disney show of this type that I could have reviewed. But we'll get there soon enough. For now, here's my take on the first episode of the Ghost and Molly McGee, The Curse. But very quickly before we start this video, I'm going to be doing a little bit of rebranding. I'm not going to be using the old background that I've been using for the past I don't know how many videos, and I'm going to be changing my name to something different because I feel that I've been trying to jump into this YouTube thing too quickly. I've been watching YouTubers for the past few years now that have this already pre-established style, and I felt like I needed to have one in order to actually be legit, when actually I don't. I can take my time. So without any more messing around, let's get into the episode.
Your performance is disappointing.
Misery is declining in Cedar Valley.
There's nothing I can do. They opened a dog rescue. You can't expect me to compete with puppies.
That is precisely what the chairman expects.
Please, I can do better. They
The episode begins with quite a lot of explanation. We see the Council of Ghosts and the chairman, who looks like the Grim Reaper's stone cousin, are in the middle of reviewing ghosts based on how miserable they keep their designated area. We see a ghost who has been having a very hard time keeping their area miserable, as shown by this meter, which will be very important later on in the episode. If your performance is not adequate, the chairman sends you to the flow of failed phantoms, where you're most likely subject to torture for the rest of time. The Ghost Council now only has one more ghost to review, and we're introduced to Scratch.
What? Hey! The Ghost Council, you guys are looking good!
Scratch, you are rude.
Rude and disgusting.
But we can't argue with your numbers. Your town of Brighton is truly a miserable place.
Scratch is given a pretty adequate introduction in this episode. He's shown to be filthy, literally showing up eating a slice of pizza from a trash can. It's very apparent that him and the council have very different personalities. Scratch is very laid back and eccentric, while the council is very high-strung and no-nonsense. They actively detest Scratch because of this. However, Scratch is very good at what the council wants from him, which is keeping his city of Brighton miserable. They have to give this sort of begrudging respect to Scratch, which is a pretty interesting dynamic between the two. It becomes even more interesting when the episode makes it clear that Scratch actually does want to be close with the council.
We are off to the Hottie Haunts Club.
Oh! I've never been. I hear it's nice.
You're not invited, Scratch.
But you are dismissed. Jerks! Who needs them? I like being alone. I like being by myself. I don't need anybody else.
It's clear that he longs for their admiration and respect, but since he's so different from them, it's obviously not going to happen. And it actually has an effect on Scratch, pretending that he doesn't need their friendship, or anyone for that matter, when he actually does. This may sound a little bit sad, but I do actually relate to this type of character a lot, because I have at times felt like the people around me think that I am not worthy of being friends with them. Which is life, I guess, and you learn to move on with it very quickly. But I do know what it is like to feel that way, and it's portrayed very well with Scratch here. I haven't watched all of the series, but because of how well it is executed here, I do hope they delve into this part of his character more. But enough about Scratch. Let's meet Molly and her family.
What I see here, limitless potential.
Hey, Mom. We're almost there.
I know. I've been tracking you. Tell Peter to step on in.
Hi, Grandma.
Molly's family is given an okay introduction, I suppose. There's Daryl, Molly's younger brother, who from the first few lines appears to be the troublemaker of the two. Apparently, he's caused flammable disasters, non-flammable disasters, and everything in between. There's Grandma Nin, who from her appearances seems to be a sassy yet loving authority figure for Molly and the rest of the family. There are the parents, Sharon and Pete, and now finally Molly.
Dad, I'm not gonna lie to you. I love it! Is kind of a dump. It needs the Molly McGee touch.
For those that haven't been following Disney's animated shows for the past few years, let me initiate you into something. Disney, ever since the success of Star vs. the Forces of Evil, has found a very comfortable niche when it comes to their show's main characters that appeals to a very specific type of fan, which I can't say that I am. The Owl House, Amphibia, Star vs. and Molly McGee all have very similar character tropes and dynamics. There's the girl who is optimistic about everything, is super energetic, and is often considered too annoying or too weird by the other characters, that is put into a situation that they're not familiar with. There's the young male sidekick, who 3 out of 4 times is a magical being who acts as the foil to the main character. The main character is always going to have trouble fitting into their new environment, and is always going to have that one character or characters that will be antagonizing towards them for being too different and weird. Last but not least, the main character is always going to get shipped with another character. It's a constant when it comes to these shows. If you're into shipping, that's fine, but let me just say that my experiences with these people haven't been the best, to say the least. So there's always going to be that part of me inside that winces whenever shipping is mentioned. This type of show has essentially been made 4 times in the past 5 years or so, leading to a real lack of originality among Disney's Star lineup. It was fine with Star vs. since it was the first of its kind. Amphibia and the Owl House really started to push it for me, and it was at this point where I started to notice the similarities. And Molly McGee certainly falls into this category. I guess you could say that the show is being more original by having the whole ghost aspect and it being a musical, which is fine I guess. But it's hard to ignore what the show's core aspects are. But I want to make this point very clear, is that I'm not judging Molly's character off of the first episode. I've barely watched half of the show, and for all I know, she could have so much more character depth that just hasn't been revealed unto me. What I am saying is that if I come back to the show in, say, a few more episodes, and I'm greeted with the exact same character that I've seen for nearly 5 years now, I'm gonna be a bit disappointed, and it's gonna hurt my opinion of the show. I am gonna review the show again, so hopefully by then I'll be proven wrong.
Hey, those cobwebs are vintage.
A ghost?
In any case, Molly meets Scratch, and instead of questioning how a ghost is right in front of her, she gets really excited, saying she's never met a ghost before. Now, if you have met a ghost before, that would be quite concerning, but the way she says it implies that meeting a ghost would even be in the realm of possibility. And I guess for some people it is, but I review cartoons. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. So Scratch curses Molly, and of course Molly doesn't really take it seriously, instead excited that she now has someone who's going to be with her forever. She's definitely one of the more eccentric types of these characters. She reminds me a lot of Star more than the other two for sure. She does have some funny moments, like when she looks inside Scratch's head, or when she slams a door into him with enough power to knock out Mike Tyson. But not a lot up to this point in the episode has done anything to show me why I should care about her. And it was at this point where I started to worry that I wasn't gonna like this episode. But it was also at this point where I remembered that it was a musical.
Joined at the hip, forever and ever, like an insane surge and sewed us together.
Like I said before, it is something that differentiates the show from the other 3 that I've mentioned, but it's not like it's an original concept or anything. In fact, this play was pulled straight from the Phineas and Ferb handbook. Now, to say that this show is copying Phineas and Ferb isn't necessarily true, because in my opinion, for that to be true, that would mean that everything from how the songs sound, how they're performed, how they're built around the animation, and how they fit into the episode is the same or very similar to that of Phineas and Ferb. And from what I've seen, that just isn't true. This one is your classic best friend song, there are some pretty funny visuals that accompany it, and it is fun to see the juxtaposition of Molly's attitude and Scratch slowly giving up on life.
From Ada, Oklahoma to Zuni, New Mexico, and everywhere in between. I've left behind a lot of friends. But Brighton's gonna be different.
Now, it's a small moment, sure, but it gives some light as to why Molly would be so adamant to make a friend this quickly. It's a backstory that's very different from the other 3, and I do applaud the writers for giving a unique backstory to Molly. It's quick, it says what it needs to say, and the episode moves on quite quickly. Scratch, in utter desperation, comes to the solution of scaring Molly's family into moving out of the house in order to break the curse, but not before getting absolutely torched by one of the council members.
Is there any way for a ghost who has accidentally cursed himself to uncurse himself? I'm asking for a friend, of course.
Ridiculous. You have no friends.
And I do like the scene where Molly convinces the family to stay despite there being a ghost in there. It shows that Molly is quick to think on her feet and is a very good negotiator. So props to the episode for that. The ending is also quite heartwarming, with Scratch not entirely accepting Molly as his friend, but rather accepting that he is going to be with her for the long haul, no matter what. Or is he? Remember that meter that I said was very important? Well... So that was The Curse. Overall, it was a solid first episode. There was some really funny jokes in it, I quite like Scratch as a character, and I like the dynamic between him and Molly on her own does have a lot of potential, but I would have to check on more of the series to see if it's actually fulfilled. Let me know what you think of this episode. Thank you for watching, and take care.